Welcome to the Gray Area Podcast, live on Monday, December 18th, 2023. It's your man, KG. Appreciate you joining me here on the podcast, on my YouTube channel, here at Kevin Gray Sports. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to give the podcast a 5-star rating, write a review while you're there. Appreciate you taking care of me on the rating and the review on the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube as well, and download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. I am your Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak. The Mavericks taking on the Denver Nuggets tonight at Ball Arena. Mavericks' best record on the road so far at 9-4. Denver 10-2 at home. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Trust me, I got plenty of thoughts on the Cowboys and their butt whooping that they took at the hands of the Buffalo Bills on Sunday afternoon. Don't worry, I got plenty of thoughts on that. But again, going to give some people some time to jump into the show here live here on the Gray Area Podcast. Busy weekend in the NFL in Week 15 of the National Football League. We'll have some overreaction. Week 15 NFL overreaction after the Baltimore Ravens. They put a beat down on the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday Night Football. They're now 11-3, looking like the best team in the AFC. Meanwhile, the San Francisco 49ers, they moved to 11-3 after a beat down they put on the Arizona Cardinals 45-29, where Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey looked like the best best running back quarterback tandem right now in the NFL. Plenty to get to for Week 15 NFL overreaction as far as that's concerned. But I know what you're here for. You know why I'm here. The Cowboys yesterday took a butt whooping in Buffalo, 31-10. James Cook went full Thurman Thomas on the Dallas Cowboys as he was absolutely spectacular. Josh Allen, as he mentioned yesterday, he just happened to be part of the group project that got the A in the win. As far as the Bills were concerned, they keep their playoff hopes alive at 8-6. Cowboys, of course, dropped to 10-4 after what was a performance that reminded me a lot of what happened against Arizona and what happened against San Francisco. Dak Prescott's MVP chances going out the window for good. He goes 21-34 for a $134 and an interception, was sacked a couple of times. Running game was virtually non-existent once again. Where have you heard that before? Tony Pollard had 11 carries for 52 yards. Cowboys only had 89 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, your man James Cook went for 25 carries for a $179 and a touchdown in the game. Josh Allen, again, wasn't great at all. Just 7-15 for 94 yards. Did have a touchdown pass in the game. James Cook was on the receiving end, of course, of that touchdown as well. So all the talk coming into this game, and I talked about it on the pregame show that I had yesterday afternoon, that the Cowboys had a chance on a national level to cement their place in the conversation as one of the best teams in the NFL. And now they fall to 3-4 on the road, a team that has dominated at home so far this year, but can't win on the road, having lost 4 games on the road as part of their 10-4 record. Now we have to take on a Miami Dolphin team that blew the doors off the Jets yesterday on Sunday, and the Cowboys don't look like a team based on what they've done at home this year. I don't understand what the difference is between what they do at home and what they do on the road. When it comes to their road record being at 3-4 and what they've done at home being obviously undefeated. From my man BD jumping in. And again, you can leave a comment too if you want to here on the show as we're live here on Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. We may not be in the 2000s anymore, but the middle linebacker position is still important on a defense. They have to find a replacement for Leighton Vander Esch. Well, here's the thing. You know, the Cowboys are undersized at the linebacker spot, as you mentioned. Marquise Bell was not able to do much. Damone Clark tried to do the best that he could. But this is a defense that's built on speed and quickness. And we've seen it now against San Francisco. We've seen it against Arizona. And now we've seen it against Buffalo when they match up against physical football teams that are a little bit heavier, a little bit beefier, and have made a commitment to running the football. The Cowboys have not been able to stop it. And that, to me, is a big concern when you look at what teams that they're going to have to face in the playoffs. Because here's where things stand right now. If the season were to end today, guess what the Cowboys would be? They would be the 5th seed in the NFC playoffs because they're not going to get any worse than the 5th seed because, the NFC South is going to have a winner by default. Shout out to Baker Mayfield, by the way. Perfect QB rating, handling business against Green Bay and the Green Bay Packers. We'll get to that in a little bit in our overreaction or not for week 15 of the NFL. But if the season were to end today, the Cowboys would be the 5th seed. They would have to play the NFC South division winner. Let's say they win on the road in Wild Card weekend. Guess where they would be headed yet again in the playoffs? That's right, boys and girls. They would be headed to Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers again because the San Francisco 49ers are currently the number 1 seed in the NFC playoffs if the season ended today. Congratulations, Dallas. The NFC East chances pretty much gone by the wayside with Philadelphia owning the tiebreaker. And Philadelphia obviously has the easiest schedule remaining of the two teams between the Cowboys and the Eagles. They take on the Seattle Seahawks tonight. Again, we'll touch on some of that as well. Let's see. I love this name. Heavy Chevy. DQ needs to put Micah and Rashaan Evans in the middle and go to a traditional 3-4 defense. Look, I understand and I like the suggestion, but you're not going to be changing entire defensive philosophies and schemes at this late in the season. This is who they are at this point. They're light when it comes to the linebacker spot. And you saw, and I don't know how much Jonathan Hankins would have made a difference in the way that the Cowboys run defense performed yesterday, but you could tell he was obviously missed in the middle for this Cowboys run defense. And they just did not show up at all. Offensively, they couldn't get things going. And you say, Kevin, look, there were a few pivotal moments in this game where the Cowboys made mental mistakes, both on offense and on defense. And more importantly, and I'm so sick of talking about this particular subject when it comes to the Cowboys. Undisciplined penalties, whether it be the unnecessary roughness penalty, whether it be the penalty that Sam Williams had on the block punt. I don't know what the hell Sam Williams was doing. Just go block the kick instead of leaping at the punter and then causing an unnecessary roughness penalty, roughing the kicker penalty, which extends another drive. And that's what killed me yesterday. 18 of the 21 points that you saw that the Bills scored came off of penalties that extended drives and allowed them to score points. Now, the DeMarcus Lawrence one that he had on Josh Allen becoming today's Vlade Divac of the NFL with his professional flopping skills, you still can't do it. As upset as I was at the penalty, you can't do it. And that's exactly what happened with DeMarcus Lawrence. Now, Mike McCarthy, I got to bring this to Big Mike. What's up, TJK TV? Appreciate you hanging out with me here on the Gray Area Podcast live here on my YouTube channel. Tell everyone to come on in, come hang out with me as we get ready to take on, as we talk about the Cowboys and what they did against the Buffalo Bills yesterday. That's what bothered me yesterday. I talked about the DeMarcus Lawrence penalty, and then I got to get to your man, Big Mike, for a second. Because with an opportunity, it was 5 minutes and 36 seconds left in the second quarter. Stephon Diggs catches a pass, ball gets knocked out, and you got 3 timeouts at that particular point in the first half. What you saving the timeouts for? You see Buffalo trying to hurry up and get back to the line of scrimmage to snap the football. They know what's up because I'm sure somebody indicated to them, hey, man, if the Cowboys challenge this, they're probably going to win this challenge because it was a fumble that Stephon Diggs had when the ball got knocked out. Mike McCarthy taking his sweet time trying to wait for confirmation from his guys to be able to decide whether or not to take the challenge. Hey, man, you got 3 timeouts. Throw the challenge flag. If you lose, so what? Who cares about keeping the first half timeouts? That didn't happen. And of course, that was a pivotal moment that, again, just mental mistakes, whether it be offensively, defensively, game management from your man, Big Mike. No one seemed to show up in the way that you needed to in a nationally televised game where the world, again, watching as they always do when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. And now they find themselves at 10-4 from RC. Our linebackers didn't play aggressive. I watched Damone Clark wait for linemen and running backs to come to him. Look, there's a lot of different things that you could say about who showed up and who didn't show up in this game. The most important point is they didn't when they needed to, especially in difficult road conditions in Buffalo. Because for a while in the first half, the conditions were not a factor. While it started to rain during the second half, the game was well out of hand by then. But the Cowboys didn't take advantage of an opportunity. They missed a deep shot with Brandon Cooks. In the first half, Dak Prescott had a chance to get the game, really into an interesting space by connecting with Brandon Cooks. That didn't happen. It was just a lot of execution that did not happen for the Cowboys from BD. Even with Overshown coming back, they have to draft a linebacker. Was one of the comp picks that we get. Yeah, linebacker needs to be addressed, which was one of the reasons why, even if how you felt about Shaquille Leonard and where his body stood at this point in his career, why the Cowboys were one of the teams that were in on Shaq Leonard, because they needed linebacker help. This is why even a couple of years ago, when Bobby Wagner signed with the Los Angeles Rams at the time, I was in on the Cowboys having to sign him to be able to help with the linebacker depth. Anyway, that's beside the point, as we're further away from that as well. From RC, I didn't like them deferring to the second half when lately we have been the aggressor and wanting the ball first. There's another, small aspect of that as well. But this, for me, as I try to take a deep breath, take a step back, look at it from 30,000 foot view, here's what did happen yesterday. The Cowboys did clinch a playoff spot. They are officially in the tournament for the third year in a row, even though Dak Prescott doesn't give a damn about it, as he said at the end of during his press conference yesterday. That did happen by the virtue of the Atlanta Falcons losing. The Cowboys are back in the playoffs for the third straight year. The question is, and the biggest one for me is, do I believe, based on what they have done against good teams, whether it be San Francisco, Philadelphia, now Buffalo, do I believe that this team, when they are at their best, can beat the upper echelon teams in the NFL? And right now, I don't think that's the case against San Francisco. You saw what they did in destroying the Arizona Cardinals, something the Cowboys simply could not do themselves. But are they one of the few contenders in the NFC? Yes. Even Greg Olsen made the point during the Fox broadcast yesterday, that while the loss yesterday to the Bills wasn't what you wanted to see from the Cowboys, it didn't necessarily change his mind and what he thought the Cowboys could be moving forward in the rest of the NFC, because the NFC is going to go through San Francisco, and the Cowboys have a chance to be able to make that still happen by virtue of moving through the NFC playoffs. From TJK TV, losing like we have on the road and also barely winning on the road is a trend, to be honest. Come playoff time, we might be in trouble. Yeah, because now the road is going to go through the road to the NFC title game. The Cowboys, will probably play the NFC South winner by virtue of being the 5 seed. Then they would have to go on the road, most likely as the lowest seed remaining, if somehow the Los Angeles Rams or whomever is the 7 seed has a miraculous win, in the wild card round to advance to the playoffs. Most likely, your Cowboys would be headed to San Francisco. And let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you would favor the Cowboys against the San Francisco 49ers on the road right now? Hell no, you wouldn't. And I wouldn't either. Based on the matchup problem that the Cowboys have with the physicality and the speed that the San Francisco 49ers present, and the way that the 49ers look when they're healthy on both sides of the football. Brock Purdy right now is the league's MVP. And I can't believe I'm saying that out loud. It is what it is. He's been spectacular distributing the football to Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and the like. And I know, BD, don't sleep on the Rams. The Rams are playing some real good football right now. Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp had a nice touchdown yesterday. The Rams are a good football team, and Sean McVay is playing and got them going in the right direction. So I'm not sleeping on the Rams. I'm just saying 7 seeds are 7 seeds for a reason, but the Rams may be one of the most dangerous ones that we've seen since the playoff format has gone to the 14 teams in the playoffs. So trust me, I'm not sleeping on the Los Angeles Rams and the way that they're playing ball right now. They're playing some really good football for Sean McVay in that group. But this is about what Dallas didn't do and the nastiness around the conversation that will be around this team throughout this entire week. And for me personally, when will this team display the kind of physicality like they did last week? And that's what bothered me also about the game yesterday. You saw the physicality and the pain that they brought to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football last week. They did not bring that same type of road intensity and mentality against the Buffalo Bills on Sunday. That's a problem, because if you cannot bring that physical mentality, that mindset on the road against good football teams, you're not going to win. And when the margin of error is as thin as it is in the National Football League, especially when you're going on the road to face good football teams, you cannot commit undisciplined penalties the way that the Cowboys did yesterday and that they tend to do when they get into high leverage situations. And it bit them in the butt again yesterday. And for Mike McCarthy and this team, that has got to stop. Because if you're going to consider yourself one of the best teams in the NFL, you've got to remain disciplined. You've got to remain within yourself and not commit the types of penalties that will put your team in a bind and, more importantly, extend drives for good football teams that have a lot of weapons like the Buffalo Bills do with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, James Cook, who's been playing out of his mind over the last month. You simply can't do it. And the Cowboys did that against Buffalo on Sunday. From RC, I expect Miami and Detroit to play us like Buffalo. Now, here's what's interesting about Detroit. Detroit, quiet as it's kept, defensively hasn't been good over the last month. So the offense could be able to score points, and maybe your best offense is a good, your best defense is a good offense against a team like Detroit. But you're right. The idea being running the football and doing so with a physical nature against this Cowboys run defense. Because Miami, you saw what they did to the Jets yesterday, and hopefully that puts an end to the whole Aaron Rodgers deal possibly coming back this season. Raheem Mostert has got 20 touchdowns this season for the Miami Dolphins. They run the football extremely well. Detroit runs the football extremely well with the running backs they have with Jahmyr Gibbs there and what they've got going on running the football. These are physical football teams that the Cowboys are going to have to deal with and going to have to find a way to win games against. From TJK TV, it's as if the Cowboys played on grass yesterday. Didn't expect them to play like that on turf, since we are a better team on turf versus grass. That's another element of this season that's been weird, how good the Cowboys have been on the turf versus natural grass, which, again, they'll be playing on natural grass next week when they take on Miami and the Miami Dolphins. So another thing to look at going into next week's game against the Dolphins. But I'm just disappointed yet again about this team and the lack of physical and mental capacity that they showed on the road against a quality football team. It's inexcusable at this point. And let's take it now to, Dan Quinn and his doorstep. You can look at the 49ers game. You can look at the Seattle game. You can look at this game against the Buffalo Bills. There's something amiss when it comes to the kind of defense that his team has been playing against some of the better offenses. While, yes, there was issues in terms of your linebacker play not being able to play downhill. And you saw one of my favorite plays for Buffalo that they had yesterday. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure you do. Deion Dawkins took Damone Clark about 20 yards downfield and pancaked his tail basically all the way to the 1-yard line. That, to me, was the microcosm of that game yesterday and the physical nature at what the Buffalo Bills decided to play with. And again, let me take a step back. The Buffalo Bills were playing a desperate type of football because they needed to win yesterday's game. They're now 8-6, 6-2 at home. They had to win yesterday's game in order to keep their slim playoff chances alive. And they played like the more desperate team, the team that needed it more than the Cowboys. So I give them credit for being able to do that at home. And I had picked Buffalo to win the game. Now, I had picked it to be a little bit closer in that game because I thought the Cowboys would be able to show up a little bit more on the road. But I did pick Buffalo to win yesterday's game. I believe I picked it 27-24, something like that, but a fairly close game. Not a 21-point blowout on the road. So, again, let me know your thoughts. We're talking about Cowboys, Bills, reacting to the game yesterday. Cowboys fall to 10-4, 3-4 on the road so far this season. They've got 3 games left. They go on the road against Miami next Sunday. Then they take on the Detroit Lions on December 30th before finishing up against the Washington Commanders to end their season. From RC's soft mentality that the Cowboys not know the state Buffalo was in as far as keeping their season alive. I'm sure that they did, but this was more about what the Cowboys didn't do and unfortunately who they continue to show themselves to be in these types of situations, when yet you have an opportunity outside of AT&T Stadium to prove that you have what it takes to win on the road, to be considered a team that no matter what state you play in, no matter what stadium you play in, no matter what conditions you play in, you have a chance to win a football game. They didn't do that on Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. So here we are. Cowboys offensively stunk. Defense stunk. Everybody on special teams didn't play well either. Hello, Sam Williams, and that goofy block punt attempt or whatever that was that he tried to do against Buffalo yesterday. I'll come back to the Cowboys a little bit later on when it comes to the show. But let me know your overreaction to the weekend as well, and what was a fascinating weekend in the National Football League, of course, highlighted by the Cowboys losing to the Buffalo Bills. Last thing I'll say on this when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys and what happened yesterday. I'm tired of having to talk about this team in some of the terms that I do and the amount of time that I've spent talking about this team in these terms, because no matter if it's this year, last year, the year before, some of the common threads that we've seen when they've gotten to the biggest games of their seasons, undisciplined football, bad penalties and bad timing, and getting out physicaled by their opponent. When we talked about Mike McCarthy and the mentality that he wanted to change to this team, and he's talked about it over the last couple of years, we've got to be physically more tough when it comes to defending the run and also running the football. Because remember what happened coming into this season? Mike McCarthy said he wanted to run the football and lean on its defense. And the offense for the Cowboys has been what's been carrying them so far this year. And they couldn't even depend on that yesterday. Offensive line play was terrible. At one point, the Smith brothers got their tail whooped on a stunt that led to a sack. It was just all bad on all fronts for the Cowboys and what happened yesterday in the game against Buffalo. Again, my name is Kevin Gray. This is the Gray Area Podcast Live. It is Monday, December 18th, 2023, talking about Cowboys, Bills on Sunday afternoon. As the Cowboys lose by 21 on the road, they get to regroup and get ready to take on a Miami Dolphin team that looked really good against the New York Football Jets. That gets me to overreaction week 15, overreaction or not. Real quick from RC, this game was just as important as the Philly game. Tough team on the road. We needed this game. I'm right there with you when it comes to the Cowboys from TJK TV. It sucks because Dak had a clear route to the MVP, and the Cowboys had a clear route for home playoff games, barring the Eagles fumbling the bag, will be on the road. Another excellent point there. Dak's MVP chances out the window. Home playoff games, see you later. And one thing that I found very interesting, and I promise you I'm going to get to NFL overreaction or not, the amount of people yesterday who were overreacting to or reacting to the game saying, look, I don't care if the Cowboys get home field advantage or have a home playoff game, as long as this team is healthy and has a chance to be in the playoffs to try and get to the NFC title game. That takes away from everything that this team has shown you who they are so far this year. They win everything that they play at home at AT&T Stadium. They can't hardly win on the road. If any team needs a home playoff game or multiple home playoff games to advance to the playoffs, it's the Dallas Cowboys. So for all of you who feel like that the Cowboys, oh, don't worry about it, the NFC East, I don't care about winning the NFC East. Let me tell you what the goal for every team coming into the NFL season is every single year, including your Dallas Cowboys. The first goal is to win your division. Do you know why that's the case? Because you guarantee yourself a whole playoff game no matter what. And the Cowboys need it more than anybody in the NFL based on what they've proven to you so far this year. They can't win on the road against good football teams. They need to play as many home games as possible in the tournament. That's where they are right now, and that's where they won't be when the playoffs start. Yes, BD, Purdy, Brock Purdy, that is about to be the MVP. Whatever. I don't want to talk about that right now because he's been extremely good. All right. NFL overreaction or not in week number 15. Give me some of your overreactions or not based on what you saw this weekend in the National Football League, whether it be the Cowboys and the Bills, whether it be the Baltimore Ravens handling business on Sunday Night Football against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let me know overreaction or not as we run down some of the things that happened over the weekend in the National Football League from TJK TV. The Cowboys Stadium finally has a home field advantage, and they can't use it in the playoffs. That's right. They cannot use it because they won't be playing home playoff games. But somebody who will be playing home playoff games, hey, man, Baltimore's legit. I'm here on the Lamar Jackson MVP train. You saw, unfortunately, they had a devastating injury to one of their running backs yesterday, but they get the win yesterday as they handle business against Jacksonville. I believe it was 24-7 on the road on Sunday Night Football to be able to beat Jacksonville 23-7 to hand Jacksonville their sixth loss of the season. Baltimore now 11-3 on the road. And here's what I love about the Baltimore Ravens and something that they do that the Cowboys don't. They win on the road. They're 6-1 on the road this year away from M&T Bank Stadium. And here's one of my overreactions. My overreaction coming out of week 15 is that the Baltimore Ravens are the best team outside of the San Francisco 49ers. We say, Kevin, that's not an overreaction. Well, given what we've seen from teams like the Cowboys, what we've seen from the whomever you want to take your pick, the Kansas City Chiefs, they got a nice win against New England. They needed to have it. The Baltimore Ravens are the second best team in the National Football League. And I think they will be the AFC representative out to get to the Super Bowl. That's how good they are and how good. Did you see that play that Isaiah Likely and Lamar Jackson had yesterday during that game? Lamar Jackson escaping a sack, finds Isaiah Likely down the field. They complete the pass, and it was off to the races from there. But look, defensively, Baltimore's really good. Offensively, they can run the football in a number of different ways, and Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP-like level, and they can win away from home, and that's something that you've got to be able to do in the NFL. You've got to be able to protect the football, run the football, and win on the road in the playoffs. Baltimore is capable of doing that. They look like they are the best team outside of San Francisco. They, to me, will be, in my mind, based off of what I know right now, what I've seen, they look like they will be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. So you say, Kevin, that's kind of a, modest overreaction or not. I don't think it necessarily is, but we'll move on from there. From BD, Baker Mayfield just might be legitimate starting quarterback. Cleveland just isn't a good place to develop and win. How about Baker Mayfield? Overreaction or not, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will win a playoff game in the NFC playoffs. Well, you say, Kevin, now wait a minute. If you're saying that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win a playoff game, that means they would beat the Cowboys in the NFC wildcard round. Well, did you see what Baker Mayfield did yesterday? My man had a perfect QB rating. Let me run down the numbers because I want to make sure I give the man his flowers yesterday. The Bucs win 34-20. They take out the Green Bay Packers, driving the Packers to 6-8. on the season. Baker Mayfield had a perfect QB rating of 158.3 from TJK TV. Baker, the best road quarterback? Well, he might be the way that he's playing right now. And you give Todd Bowles a lot of credit for the way that he has handled this team. And quietly, as it's kept, they right now are finding themselves playing some really, really good football because, again, as my stuff likes to crash on me as I talk about, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that way, because who knew I would be doing that on an Overreaction Monday. Baker Mayfield had 4 touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers. And you look at what they've got now going for the rest of the season, that NFC South, based on what has happened so far with the Falcons and with the Bucks and the Panthers getting an upset win yesterday in the NFC South. The Buccaneers right now, let's look at their schedule, okay? They went 34-20 over the Green Bay Packers. And now when you look at the rest of their schedule for the final remaining 3 games that they have games at home against Jacksonville, at home against the Saints, and then on the road against Carolina. I'm picking the Bucs to win 2 out of those final 3 games. So I would pick them to win at home against New Orleans. Obviously, they're going to beat the Carolina Panthers, to end the season. And then their game against Jacksonville on the 24th, that's a toss-up. And who knows what kind of direction it feels like Jacksonville's going in right now. But Baker Mayfield throwing for 381 yards, 4 touchdowns. Hey, man, you give him a lot of credit as they're trying to get back to the postseason and maybe see the Cowboys as being winners of the NFC South. From RC, the Browns winning with Joe Flacco and no star running back. Okay. Shout out to Joe Flacco, the elite Joe Flacco. You see that touchdown pass he had to Amari Cooper and helping them be able to overcome the Chicago Bears in what was, a badly entertaining game, if that's possible, because, Cleveland doesn't necessarily scare anybody, but what they keep doing is finding ways to win with a man who was literally sitting on his couch in his mom's living room just a month ago, and now he's helped the Cleveland Browns be able to win football games. Oh, I got to throw this in. This comes from Stephen Claiborne. KG, the Bucs did quote unquote upgrade at quarterback, going from a former 6th rounder to the former number 1 overall pick in the draft. In the most technical sense, Stephen, you are 100% correct that as Beyonce would say, let me upgrade you. That's what the Bucs did in getting Baker Mayfield. But in all seriousness, give Mayfield a lot of credit for the way that he's played. He's embraced that role there. They're playing well for him, and he's playing well as a result. And the Bucs have now won 3 straight games, having beaten Carolina, Atlanta, and then Green Bay. They've won their last 2 games on the road, beating the Falcons and the Packers. So, Tampa Bay is a team that you don't necessarily want to see when it comes to the last few games of the season, but obviously in the final stretches of the playoffs. Overreaction Monday or not here when it comes to the the Week 15 NFL schedule based off of what we see. Let's look at the playoff picture right now, because I want to make sure that you'll have a good idea of what's happening right now as far as the playoff picture is concerned after Week 15 going into tonight's games with the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Seattle Seahawks. So as it stands right now, again, as my stuff continues to crash, let me know what your overreaction is or not. From BD, and Sam Howell, is it the answer for Washington? Numbers are inflated. I bet they draft one in the first round this year. The new ownership is cleaning house. Reports are Ron Rivera is going to get fired at the end of the year, which doesn't surprise me. It shouldn't surprise you at all, because Magic Johnson, Josh Harris, and that group taking over, they're going to want to bring in their new staff and coaching staff as well to put a stamp on their own organization. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me. So as we look at it right now, let's look at the AFC. Baltimore at 1, Miami at 2, Kansas City at 3, Cleveland right now also at 9-5. You got Jacksonville there at 8-6, Cincinnati and the Colts. So if the playoffs were to start today, the Jacksonville Jaguars would be the 4 seed by virtue of winning the AFC South. Cleveland would be the 5th seed at 9-5 as a wild card team. Okay. And then let's look at the NFC real quick. San Francisco, Philadelphia, Detroit right now would be the 3 seed. And of course, the Cowboys would be the 5 seed, as I mentioned. With Tampa Bay right now would be the 4 seed by virtue of winning the NFC South. And based off the way Baker Mayfield's playing right now, if you're the Cowboys, man, you might want to pay attention. You might want to pay attention to what's going on. The Minnesota Vikings would be in at 7-7, and probably the most dangerous 7-7 team right now in the NFL are the Rams. And that is my overreaction when it comes to the Rams. They are the most dangerous 7-7 team in the National Football League. We touched on it a little bit earlier. This is a team in the Rams that you look at now, 7-7 on the year. They win yesterday. Matthew Stafford's been playing some good football for them, as well as they were able to get the win against the Washington Commanders 28-20. They finish up their schedule at home against New Orleans, on the road against the Giants, and then on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. That's going to be a fun game for the 49ers and the Rams. Now, depending on where the 49ers are, that game may not mean much to them because they will most likely cemented the number 1 seed at that particular point. So Brock Purdy and those boys may not even be playing at that particular point of the season, which means that could give the Rams an opportunity to be able to get into the playoffs. And right now, I'm picking them to beat the Saints. Obviously, I'm picking them to beat the Giants on the road. And then, as I mentioned, if San Francisco's got nothing to play for, they would probably win that game against San Francisco. So they're in position where if they win their final 4 games in a row, they're going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to be a dangerous football team to have to contend with. From Aaron Fuqua, if the Eagles lose tonight versus the Seahawks, the Cowboys will own the tiebreaker if both teams win out. That's a big if. It looks like Jalen Hurts is going to play. Drew Lock looks like it's going to be the starting quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. While I was hoping Geno Smith would be able to get out there and play, it doesn't look like that'll happen. The Eagles got the easiest schedule, remaining for the rest of the year. There's no guarantee that the Cowboys handle business against Miami next week, because what gives you confidence based on what you saw the Cowboys do against Buffalo that they can walk to Miami and be able to beat the Miami Dolphins with that high-octane offense that they got right now? I don't have a lot of confidence based off of what I saw yesterday. So while, yes, that is still the possibility as far as that's concerned, my mind has left the idea of the Cowboys winning the NFC East at this point based on what has happened there. But my overreaction for the NFC, one of them is the Los Angeles Rams are the most dangerous 7-7 team in the National Football League right now. Because do you want to take on that offense with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and the way that Stafford's playing football right now? I don't think so. So I'll go with that when it comes to the most dangerous football team at 500. I'll go with the Rams at that point. It's the Gray Area Podcast live here. Appreciate you hanging out with me here on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button there as well. If you want to join and become a Gray Area Club member for just a couple of bucks a month for my exclusive content that I have on the channel, you can definitely do that as well. And you can subscribe to the Gray Area Podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Write a review, give the podcast a 5-star rating while you're there. That would be sincerely appreciated. Again, NFL overreaction or not for Week 15. As we saw, Brandon Staley get up out the paint. Got to touch on that for a second, because let me tell you something. I don't know how Brandon Staley survived to keep his job the first time after they blew that massive lead in the playoffs last year to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They clean house. They fired GM Tom Telesco, who was there for 11 years. Brandon Staley, he's out the paint as well. Kellen Moore couldn't even get the interim job for the rest of the season for the Los Angeles Chargers. That organization is in trouble. Justin Herbert done for the year with a broken finger. That team is an absolute mess with even all the talent that they have there. It had been high time that the Chargers had fired Brandon Staley and cleaned house with Tom Telesco as well, because you let the Raiders drop 63 on your tail. Come on, man. Everybody got to go at that particular point. And the Chargers clean house this weekend as well. So look, it was a busy weekend of action in the National Football League. The Cowboys obviously embarrassing themselves on Sunday afternoon in Buffalo, losing 31-10, getting a garbage touchdown to CeeDee Lamb that didn't necessarily matter. And now all eyes will be squarely on this team as they take on the Miami Dolphins this upcoming weekend as well. Again, continue to leave your comments in the chat as far as week 15 of the NFL is concerned and what you believe will happen for the final 3 games of the rest of the regular season, because hard to believe that's where we are. We are at the final 3 weeks of the NFL regular season, and what happens down the stretch will be a lot of fun to watch based off of what happened this weekend and some of the teams that won and some of the teams that didn't, who needed to win. Shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs. They got a win that they desperately had to have as they beat the New England Patriots to avoid the first ever 3-game losing streak in the Patrick Mahomes era. So Mahomes and the Chiefs, they get the win to beat the New England Patriots there. We'll see what happens with Bill Belichick at the end of the year if he keeps his job based on what's happening there. As I mentioned, the Ravens had a big injury with Mitchell likely out for the season with a devastating knee injury there. We've got Monday Night Football tonight. Eagles taking on the Seahawks. That game in Seattle, kickoff at 7:15. Seahawks at 6-7. They desperately need a win to keep their slim playoff chances alive. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles looking to move to 11-3 to further cement their hold on the NFC East after watching the Cowboys lose yesterday to drop to 10-4. They have a chance to move to 11-3. It looks like Jalen Hurts is going to play. Darius Slay not going to play. He's going to have knee surgery, so he's going to be out for a little bit. They also, according to Jay Glazer, made a change at defensive coordinator. How desperate and how broken do you have to be after what happened to you against San Francisco and to the Dallas Cowboys that they've installed Matt Patricia as their defensive coordinator, or the guy at least who's going to be calling the defensive plays for the Philadelphia Eagles moving forward? There are reports out of Philadelphia that DC Sean Desai was not carrying himself with quote-unquote confidence around his players, thus based off of the performance that they've had over the last couple of weeks, and then needed to have a win tonight against the Seattle Seahawks. The Eagles make a change in moving Matt Patricia into the spot to call the plays moving forward there. How that works out from them, I don't know. But it looks like Nick Sirianni hit the panic button when it came to his defense, and I would too, based on the way that my secondary has been looking over the last several weeks, getting torched by the Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. If Drew Lock comes out there and torches them tonight with DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and also Tyler Lockett, they got bigger problems in Philadelphia. But that's going to be capping off week number 15 of the NFL. Can the Philadelphia Eagles move to 11-3 and basically put the NFC East out of reach by virtue of winning tonight? That will be fun to see. As my friends Kelsey Charles and Meg Murray would say, Dallas forever, Philly for never, and always cheering against the Philadelphia Eagles no matter what when it comes to their game tonight against the Seahawks. Shout out to Drew Lock, MIZZOU, my Missouri Tigers, coming to AT&T Stadium December 29th for the Cotton Bowl to take on the Ohio State University. Look, again, let me know your comments in the chat as well. Got a lot of comments is there as well as far as talking about the game tonight between the Eagles and the Seahawks. My favorite comment of today so far, shout out to Stephen Claiborne. The Bucs did upgrade at quarterback, getting a former 6th-round pick out of there and getting a number 1 overall pick in the draft in Baker Mayfield. Again, big shout out to Baker Mayfield for his performance. Best QB performance of the weekend. Maybe. Yeah. Agree. I agree there. Best QB performance of the weekend, throwing for over 350 yards, 4 touchdowns, perfect QB rating, taking out the Green Bay Packers. A little bit of NBA for you. Mavericks, as you can see, I got my Mavericks shirt on if you're watching here on YouTube. Mavericks take on the Denver Nuggets tonight as the Mavericks got a win on Saturday against the Portland Trail Blazers to get their win, to get their second win in 8 days, actually, in Portland. They begin a difficult 4-game stretch here where they alternate home and road games over the next 4. They are on the road tonight in Denver. Then they come back home Wednesday to take on the Los Angeles Clippers. Then they go back on the road to take on the Houston Rockets on Friday as part of a back-to-back. And then they come back home to take on Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs on Saturday night. So the Mavericks got a difficult stretch ahead of them as they get ready to take on the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic. They're coming off a loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got a bucket with 0.9 seconds left to steal a win for the Thunder on the road against the Denver Nuggets. Nuggets got a 10-2 home record. Mavericks got the best record on the road so far in the NBA at 9-4. They're going to be without Derek Lively II. They're going to be without, obviously, Kyrie Irving. He was dealing with a heel contusion, so he will not be available. Mavericks going to be shorthanded tonight with no Josh Green, no Maxi Kleber, obviously also available as well. I would not be surprised if the Mavericks catch that L in Denver from BD. Let's throw that up here. KG, you buying the Isaiah Stewart rumors? He feels a need, but what would your realistic trade package be? Appreciate the question. As far as Isaiah Stewart's concerned, so look, he goes 6'8", listed at about 240, 250. Doesn't rebound very well for a guy of his size. In fact, only averaging 6.8 rebounds per game so far this year, shooting 45% from the field, which if you're going to be a guy at 6'8", nearly 250, I feel like you got to rebound the basketball a little bit better. I'm not trying to give up much for Isaiah Stewart in that way. And Detroit's in kind of a weird spot because on the one hand, they've lost 23 straight basketball games, but they're also telling us that they want to try to contend and get better by adding the likes of possibly, and rumors, LJ Anunoby from, Toronto, that kind of thing. I don't look. I wouldn't give up much for Isaiah Stewart, if anything at all, to get him because let me ask you, BD, do you really want another undersized center to be a part of this roster? He's a tweener 4 at 6'8", who doesn't shoot the ball great, doesn't rebound the ball great, and yet you're talking about possibly giving up assets for him. I don't necessarily see that there now. I know that teams like the Celtics and the Thunder are the other couple of teams that were rumored by The Athletic that could be in on Isaiah Stewart in that way. I think the Mavericks have much more of a need when it comes to a legitimate backup center behind Derek Lively II versus an undersized center who doesn't necessarily rebound the ball great. Holmes 2.0, but has a battery. Laugh out loud. So that would be my thought on that. But the Mavericks got to get a win tonight. I don't know if it necessarily happens. Luka Doncic got a 61st career triple-double. This past Saturday against Portland. He would need another monster performance against the Denver Nuggets. They lost back on November 3rd at Ball Arena to Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. I don't know if they've got enough tonight, even with Luka Doncic in the lineup. Dante Exum has been really, really good for them, with his defense, knocking down threes. Tim Hardaway Jr. is a leading sixth man of the year candidate, averaging 17, 18 points off the bench for the Mavericks. So they've got their work cut out for them tonight against Denver and over the next several games. In fact, I didn't even include the Christmas Day game that they got to take on the Phoenix Suns on the road on Monday night. So if you include that game, you're playing in your next 5 games the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Rockets, the Spurs, who just ended their long losing streak against the Los Angeles Lakers, and then you take on the Phoenix Suns on the road on Monday night on Christmas night. So we're going to find out a lot about this about this Mavericks team over the next week or so, given the difficult schedule that they've got to contend with to try and keep up in the West. Right now, they're a team that's third in the West behind the Timberwolves, who's got the best defense in the league. You got the Oklahoma City Thunder right now. They're sitting at number 2. They've got terrific stars. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a legitimate NBA superstar. Was a first-team All-NBA selection last year alongside Luka Doncic. The Thunder can play, and they've got a lot of young cats that can really fill it up and put the ball in the basket, led by SGA. And you saw that they're starting to develop a little bit of a clutch gene, a little bit of a metal the way that they handle business against Denver, this past weekend. So Mavericks coming into tonight got their work cut out for them. Going to be an interesting game. Mavericks 16-9 on the season, 9-4 away from the AAC. Denver on the season, 9-2 at home so far this year. 10-2 at home so far this year at Ball Arena. We'll see if the Mavericks can find a way to get a win. Denver, though, 8.5-point favorite tonight at home against the Dallas Mavericks. Again, no Derek Lively the second, no Kyrie Irving, who is reportedly getting better though. But in my opinion, the Mavericks after 25 games, if you told me after 25 games the Mavericks would be 16-9, a team that's a top 5 team in terms of offensive rating, a top 10 pace team, while still middling around in the 20s in terms of defensive rating, I would take that based off of what they've been dealing with a very odd with a very odd schedule to start off the season with. Some of the interesting back-to-backs that they've had, the injuries that they've dealt with. Give Jason Kidd and this group a lot of credit for holding things together. And more importantly, when you got Luka Doncic on the floor, you have a chance to win ball games every single night. And that's what has happened so far for the Mavericks. If you had to pick two, who is the starting backcourt for the West this year at the All-Star game? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Luka Doncic. Problem solved. SGA has been that good. Luka Doncic is playing at an MVP level. For the West, it would be SGA and Luka Doncic. In the East, right now, it's got to be Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese Halliburton is playing monster basketball for Indiana. Love the way that he's playing for them. I'm glad that he's starting to get the national recognition that he deserves there. But yeah, my picks right now would be Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from the Oklahoma City Thunder. So again, Mavericks, Nuggets, Monday night, tip off at 8 o'clock. I'll have the pregame beginning at 7:30 on 97.1 The Freak, as of course I'm your Mavericks pre and post game host for 97.1 The Freak, the Dallas Mavericks radio network. From BD, the fans will most likely vote Stephen Curry. Yeah, popular name. That's why felt like posed the question there. But for my vote, I'm going with SGA and Luka Doncic. Again, big weekend in the National Football League. That is going to be the talk over the next day or so about what happened in week number 15, especially after tonight's game between the Eagles and the Seahawks. Last few minutes with me when it comes to what happened this weekend, and I hope I wasn't all over the place. I know my thoughts get a little scattered when it comes to talking about the Cowboys because they elicit such a reaction from me because you know how I feel about the Dallas Cowboys. But to kind of put all of this in a bow here, Cowboys had a chance on this stage against a good and dangerous Buffalo Bill team, and that will be also part of my overreaction or not. The Buffalo Bills are the most dangerous team outside of the Baltimore Ravens right now. You say, Kevin, what about Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? I don't trust the Chiefs receivers as far as I can throw them. As far as Jacksonville is concerned, inconsistencies when it comes to Trevor Lawrence and that offense. Cleveland, they're obviously playing some good football right now, but Joe Flacco, as I mentioned, just got off the couch a few weeks ago and playing quarterback for them right now. The most dangerous team outside of the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC right now would be, for me, the Buffalo Bills. From Antonio Hobson. Sorry I'm late. Let me apologize. We got punked. Yep, that's about sums it up about what happened with the Cowboys on Sunday. But yeah, that would be my overreaction from the NFC. The Rams are the most dangerous 7-7 team right now in the NFL. Buffalo Bills, the most dangerous team outside of the Baltimore Ravens, because when they don't turn the football over, they have a lot of guys that can, hurt you. James Cook, we've seen start to turn into that guy over the last month or so for the Buffalo Bills. But for the Cowboys, back to them. They had a chance to handle business against Buffalo. They didn't do it. They embarrassed themselves on a national stage yet again, lending themselves to not having a lot of confidence being put in them going on the road against the Miami Dolphins. Dak Prescott's MVP case has now been officially put to bed as of the loss yesterday to the Bills. And for the Cowboys now, they've got to pick themselves up yet again after being out-physicaled, out-toughed, and out-coached by Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills. And the same way I felt after the San Francisco game, the same way I feel after the Buffalo Bills game. If they have to play a team that is as physical as the Bills are and is as physical as the 49ers are, this is not a team that gives me confidence that they can stop the run because what are teams going to continue to do? If you're Miami, you're going to do it this upcoming week. If you're the Detroit Lions, you're going to do it again when you see them in a couple of weeks. You're going to run the football directly at Micah Parsons. You're going to run the football at what, yes, is a fast and quick defense, but doesn't have a lot of power and a lot of size to deal with physical rushing attacks, even with Jonathan Hankins being there as well. Yes, he was missed yesterday against the Buffalo Bills, but I don't think he would have made the kind of difference that I think Cowboys fans would have loved to have seen him make if he was on the field. That's the bottom line. And that, to me, is my biggest problem, that when teams decide to punch you in the mouth, you do not respond. The Cowboys did not do that on Sunday against the Bills. They didn't do it against the San Francisco 49ers. Hell, they didn't do it against the Arizona Cardinals either. So what questions do you have about the Cowboys from a physical standpoint? Because if they don't find that physical, intense nature needed to win playoff games on the road, this team is not going anywhere as far as the NFC playoffs are concerned. And that, to me, is the most disappointing aspect of the loss yesterday. Do I still think they're the second best team in the NFC behind the San Francisco 49ers? I do. But do I favor them to beat them on the road in a playoff game? No. Do I favor them to beat a Baltimore Raven team, a Buffalo Bill team, if they were to somehow miraculously find their way to the Super Bowl? I would not favor them to win a game in that way. They have got to prove this coming week against the Dolphins in a game that will be played on grass and where conditions should be really good against a team that is going to be looking to run them off the football field. Can they keep up? And maybe in some ways, this may be a little bit better of a matchup because of the amount of speed and quickness that the Dolphins present from the offensive side. The only problem is they run the football extremely effectively, but most importantly, they run it in creative ways with Mike McDaniel in that offense. So you've got to be a team that plays with gap integrity. You've got to play discipline, because if you don't, Miami will exploit you creatively on offense. So there's that. But that is my overarching takeaway, is yet again, a team decided to physically punch you in the mouth. The Cowboys didn't respond, and this is where things left off for the Cowboys, a 31-10 beatdown at the hands of the Bills. So what does it mean? Find a way to win next week against Miami. You've got to find a way to win, because if you don't, then the questions become that much louder about what you are, because the F word may be used for this team if they lose against Miami. And what word is that? Frauds. That's the F word that may be used this week if they don't find a way to win against Miami. And low key, it's being used right now when it comes to the Cowboys after what they did against the Eagles, but not being able to back it up against the Buffalo Bills. And I said that coming into the game. They had to find a way to back up what they did against Philadelphia with a road win against Buffalo. They didn't do it. And now here we are. And yes, Antonio, they got outcoached on both sides of the ball. Before I get out of here, though, special shout out to DeSoto, who destroyed Spring Creek over the weekend, and also to Duncanville, both of them winning state championships. Hall of Famer Reginald Samples winning his second consecutive state championship. They take out Galena Park North Shore. It feels like those two schools are destined to fight each other for forever at this point. And also special history was made in that game as well between Duncanville and Galena Park North Shore. The first time ever two African-American head coaches matched up in the state championship game as Galena Park North Shore took on Duncanville. But special shout out to Duncanville winning its second consecutive state championship. DeSoto destroying Spring Creek on the way to winning another state championship. Really sad. I felt really terrible for South Oak Cliff this weekend. I thought the referees did not do them any favors in that game in losing to Port Neches Groves in their state title game this weekend at AT&T Stadium. But good to see Duncanville and DeSoto winning state championships once again, and happy for Reginald Samples, who wins his second consecutive state championship. So a little local flavor based on what happened this weekend, as we had Texas high school state football championships. And of course, the legend in the game, Reginald Samples winning his second straight state championship. I'm going to get out of here, though, on this Monday. Really appreciate you hanging out with me here on the Gray Area Podcast. If you like the show, dig the show, make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Just search the Gray Area Podcast. Give the podcast a 5-star rating, write a review while you're there. I'll be back on Wednesday for Interview Wednesday as we get you caught up on everything happening so far in the middle of the week. And then we'll have Friends Friday. I got a special guest coming for you on Friday that you are extremely familiar with and who you may know. So looking forward to that on Friday. As Friday's my birthday. So I'm going to have a fun show on Friday on my birthday. You can catch me Mavericks pre- and post-game show on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday this week. I'll actually also be on with Jeff Kavanaugh on Thursday, doing a little bit of radio from 2 to 6 p.m. On 97.1 The Freak. So I'll be busy this week, but I'll also have my Inside the Mavs podcast and, of course, the Gray Area live show right here on my YouTube channel. So until Wednesday, my name is Kevin Gray. This has been the Gray Area Podcast Live. Appreciate you joining me, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Peace.